Lies, manipulation, and empty promises stain every Ugandan and Kenyan election period because politicians promise to give free sanitary pads to rural girls to no avail. In 2017, President Uhuru Kenyatta signed the Basic Education Amendment Act into law that guaranteed free sanitary pads for girls in state school, but this is not the situation in the country. Parents still buy pads for their daughters.
Woman, woman, a warrior is a woman.
My first experience, by the way, with my periods, it was very funny. You know what happened? Actually, for me, I went in my periods when I was very young. So I was seated in class. So I stood up. Actually, even I didn't know what was happening. And the person who tapped on me, actually, he was even a boy. He was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with your uniform?" So I had to turn around, seeing myself, oh my God, my uniform was full of blood. That was my first experience. I was so ashamed. But then the good thing, I remember by then, we were in science. So the teacher who used to teach us science by then was a female teacher. So she called me and counseled me. She was like, "No, it's very fine. When you go in your periods, it's very okay. Every young girl encounters that. You don't have to feel guilty. You're normal." Oh my God, I was so ashamed.
According to a survey done by Reach a Hand, a local NGO in Uganda, 22% of schoolgirls fail to attend school during menstruation for fear of mockery and stigma. With high anticipation to achieve their dreams, they are left hopeless and anxious. If you've been making endless promises, UNASHAMED says it ends now. Fear, worry, and restless days are what lies ahead in those 3 to 4 days. It is rather unfortunate that it is female leaders that seem to overly promise to solve these problems. But do they solve them? The cheapest sanitary towel pack costs 50 Kenya shillings in Kenya, an equivalent of $1, an approximate of which most parents find expensive. Kenya did try to bring the price of pads down, but it seems to increase depending on the inflation rate. On average, a girl misses 48 learning days as a result of painful menstruation per year. Able parents spend 1,200 Kenya shillings or $17 of 24 packs per year for every girl child.
I spend roughly 10,000 per month, and it's a lot of money, by the way. You see, I'm working, but it's still a lot. So what about a young girl who doesn't have money?
I tend to spend about 6,000. Those are like 2 packets of pads, which I barely finish. I thank God very much because at least I have kind of slowed down, or my body has slowed down.
I spend about roughly 6,000 or 7,000 maximum on pads because I buy both pads and panty liners.
This amount of money could be used for other basic needs for our family. With the COVID-19 pandemic worsening the situation and deepening the financial gap in families, most teenagers end up in unplanned marriages. Back in the day, female teachers had sessions with teenage girls on issues of hygiene and puberty. Today, this has changed. Teachers do not have time as they need to make ends meet from running their side hustles. The new education curriculum, CBC, including free education in Kenya, has stretched resources in schools to the limit. Teachers hardly inform the girls about the menstruation cycle and what to expect. The girls are left to glean from peers and enemies. But this has to change. As the world becomes fast-paced, initiatives have to be formed to help rural girls whose plight is sidelined. Even though initiatives like Holic Pads by Shiba Karungi, activists like Stella Nyanzi managed to raise 13 million Uganda shillings, an approximate of 3,270 euros back in 2017. However, there are no records to show that this is an ongoing campaign. How are those girls living by today? Some of the initiatives that try to give sanitary pads to to rural girls have run bankrupt as a result of the pandemic.
I urge all politicians who promise actually girls or young girls pads, especially when they're campaigning, during campaigns, they promise a lot. Some of them come and he's like, no, when I'm voted, I'll provide pads for the whole district. But most of them don't fulfill that. But I urge them to fulfill that, because most of the parents don't have money, especially peasants in villages. They don't have money to raise that 10,000 per month to buy pads for the girl. They have other necessities to be providing for. So if at all they spend all the money they be having to buy pads, how will they survive?
I feel like it's unfair for a politician to come out and just say, so I'm going to give you pads if you vote me. I don't know if that's how it's done, but it would be so unfair if you said that, because these people are vulnerable, they need these pads, and you're looking for the point of weakness where you can come in and say, I'll give you pads if you vote me, and then when you get your vote, you disappear in thin air. I think it's really, it's so unfair, and if I were a politician, I would rather just give out and say, I tried to give out to the community, but I failed at a certain stage, 40%, 50%, but don't use that point of weakness to, look for votes. I think it's unfair. So if you ever want to promise people pads, go ahead and follow through with your promise and make sure that you give them the pads.
It's interesting that I've seen a lot of politicians, a lot of high-ranking government officials make this promise to young girls in rural areas or areas where they are not privileged to have some of these things, that they are going to give them pads, they are going to give them sanitary towels to help them in their time of periods, in exchange for support or in exchange for votes, in exchange of alliance, it's a very, very sad thing. Okay, I see it normally during the voting time or during campaigns, but it's even worse to see a high-ranking government official stand in front of students, young people, by the way, who desperately need these things, because a pad is a basic need, by the way. It is not a luxury, it is not something that you can do without. It is a basic need. For someone of that stature to stand in front of people who are in need, girls who are in need of these materials, and make a promise, well knowing that they neither have put in place a system to deliver this promise, or neither have the funds to make this promise a reality. By the time you make that promise, make sure you have the structure in place to ensure you can give these girls these things, because they are basic needs. And it shouldn't be something where you have to promise people, surely. Pads should be something that is accessible and easily given out to girls. Why do you even have to stand in front of people and first promise them? Isn't that wrong?
Instead of making empty promises, political leaders should work together by reducing taxes on manufacturing companies, which then charge the consumers highly. They should also apprehend parents who use the cost of sanitary towels as an excuse to send their girls into marriage. Fight for the girl, especially the rural girl. Champion this for a better tomorrow. We are better together.